The Sun's Dominion. Chapter 1. The Dawn of Solar Colonization. In the year 2157, humanity had achieved the unthinkable. The dream of conquering the stars had led to the most audacious project in human history, the construction of cities on the very surface of the sun, fueled by a desperate need for energy and resources, and driven by an insatiable curiosity. The Solar Colonization Initiative, SCI, became the crowning achievement of the 22nd century. The idea had been born decades earlier, when scientists discovered the means to harness and manipulate the sun's incredible energy. Using advanced quantum shielding technology, they developed a barrier that could withstand the sun's intense heat and radiation, creating pockets of habitable space directly on the solar surface. These solar colonies were envisioned as self-sustaining cities, harvesting the sun's power while providing a new frontier for humanity. The first of these colonies, named Helios 1, was a marvel of human engineering. Situated on a relatively calm solar plane, it was protected by a massive quantum shield that converted the sun's energy into usable power while maintaining a livable environment within. The city itself was a network of towering structures, built from materials that could withstand the harshest conditions. Inside, the colonists lived in a world of light and heat, where the sun's surface was both their foundation and their greatest threat. Dr. Naomi Carter, a leading scientist in solar physics, was among the first to arrive on Helios 1. She had dedicated her life to understanding the sun, and now she was living on its very surface. For Naomi, the colony was more than just an achievement. It was a new beginning for humanity. As the first few months passed, life on Helios 1 was as stable as anyone could have hoped. The quantum shields held strong, and the colonists adapted to their new environment. The city thrived, drawing energy directly from the sun and sending it back to Earth via a series of enormous solar pipelines. Humanity's future seemed bright, but as they ventured deeper into the solar landscape, they began to encounter anomalies that defied explanation. Chapter 2. The First Encounter. It started with minor fluctuations in the quantum shield. At first, they were dismissed as routine adjustments, small discrepancies that could be easily managed. But the anomalies grew in intensity and frequency. Naomi and her team were puzzled. The shield technology was flawless, or so they thought. There was no apparent reason for the fluctuations. Then came the first sighting. A group of engineers working on the outer edge of the colony reported seeing something beyond the shield, something moving. The official reports described it as a shadow, an impossible phenomenon on the blazing surface of the sun. The engineers were visibly shaken, insisting that they had seen something alive, something intelligent. Naomi was skeptical but intrigued. She reviewed the footage captured by the engineers' drones. The images were faint, distorted by the intense radiation. But there was something there, something that didn't belong. She brought her findings to the colony's leadership, but they were reluctant to acknowledge the possibility of an unknown presence on the sun. The project's success hinged on maintaining the illusion of complete control. Admitting to the existence of an unknown force would cause panic and could jeopardize the entire initiative. Undeterred, Naomi continued her research in secret. She gathered a small team of trusted colleagues and began to investigate the anomalies more closely. They soon discovered that the fluctuations in the quantum shield were not random. They were localized, concentrated around specific areas of the colony. It was as if something was testing the shield, probing its weaknesses. As the team delved deeper, they began to piece together a disturbing pattern. The anomalies were most pronounced near the oldest parts of the sun, regions that had been stable for billions of years. It was as if something ancient and powerful was awakening beneath the surface, reacting to the presence of the colonies. Then the first attack occurred. Chapter 3. The Solar Flare. The quantum shields were designed to withstand the sun's natural fluctuations, including the occasional solar flare. But nothing could have prepared the colonists for what happened next. Without warning, a massive solar flare erupted from the surface, targeting Helios 1 with surgical precision. The flare was unlike anything ever recorded, intensely focused and directed, as if it had a purpose. The shields buckled under the assault, and parts of the colony were exposed to the full fury of the sun. The damage was catastrophic. Entire sections of the city were incinerated, and hundreds of colonists were killed instantly. Those who survived were left in shock, struggling to comprehend what had happened. Naomi and her team were among the survivors. As they scrambled to repair the damage, they realized that the flare was no natural event. It had been deliberately aimed at the colony, an act of aggression from an unknown force. The realization sent a chill through the entire colony. They were not alone on the sun, and whatever was out there was hostile. In the aftermath of the attack, the colony's leadership was forced to acknowledge the threat. Emergency protocols were enacted, and a message was sent back to Earth, warning of the situation. But communication was difficult, and the full extent of the danger was not yet understood. Naomi, now the de facto leader of the investigation, pushed for more resources to study the phenomenon. She was convinced that the flare was a response to the colony's presence, a reaction from something ancient and intelligent that had lain dormant for eons. As they worked to strengthen the shields and rebuild the colony, Naomi's team began to explore the sun's surface more extensively. They deployed a fleet of drones equipped with the latest sensors, designed to withstand the harsh conditions. What they discovered was both incredible and terrifying. Beneath the sun's surface, in the deepest layers of the plasma, they found evidence of structures, vast, complex networks that seemed to be alive. These structures were ancient, far older than the sun itself, and they appeared to be connected to the anomalies. It was as if the sun housed a civilization, one that was now waking up. Chapter 4: The Awakening. The discovery of the ancient structures sent shockwaves through the scientific community on Helios 1. Naomi's team worked around the clock to analyze the data, but the more they uncovered, the more questions they faced. The structures were unlike anything seen before, composed of energy patterns that defied conventional understanding. They seemed to operate on principles that transcended known physics, existing in a state that was both matter and energy. As the team delved deeper, they realized that the structures were not just passive relics, they were active, constantly shifting and changing. It became clear that they were part of a larger system, one that was slowly coming to life. The solar flares, the shield fluctuations, and the shadowy figures, they were all connected to this awakening. Naomi's biggest fear was confirmed when the anomalies began to intensify. The quantum shield, once stable, started to show signs of degradation. Pockets of instability appeared across the colony, causing temporary breaches that exposed sections of Helios, one to the sun's lethal radiation. Emergency repairs were conducted daily, but it was clear that the shield was under attack from within. In a desperate bid to understand what they were facing, Naomi authorized a manned expedition beyond the colony's perimeter. A team of scientists and engineers, protected by enhanced suits, ventured out into the sun's plasma. Their goal was to get closer to the ancient structures and gather more data. The mission was fraught with danger, but the team managed to reach the edge of one of the structures. What they found was beyond anything they could have imagined. The structure was alive, pulsating with energy and emitting waves of electromagnetic radiation. It responded to their presence, sending out tendrils of plasma that seemed to probe their suits, testing their defenses. The team collected as much data as they could before retreating to the safety of the colony. But as they made their way back, they realized that something was following them. The shadowy figures, first seen by the engineers, had returned. This time they were clearer, more defined. They moved with purpose, as if guarding the structures. The team barely made it back to Helios, one before the shadows attacked. A fierce battle ensued, with the colony's automated defenses barely holding them at bay. The shadows were not physical entities. They were composed of pure energy, able to phase in and out of the sun's plasma. Conventional weapons were useless against them. Naomi watched in horror as the shadows began to overwhelm the colony's defenses. They moved with intelligence, targeting weak points in the shield and breaching it in multiple locations. The colonists fought back with everything they had, but it was clear that they were outmatched. In the chaos, Naomi made a decision that would change the course of the colony's history. She activated the colony's emergency protocol, which involved channeling the sun's energy directly into the quantum shield, creating a massive energy surge. The shield flared to life, repelling the shadows and sealing the breaches. The attack was repelled, but the cost was high. The energy surge had drained the colony's reserves, leaving them vulnerable to another attack. And worse, Naomi realized that the surge had triggered a response from the ancient structures. They were now fully awake, and they were aware of the colony's presence. Chapter 5: The Message. As the colonists worked to repair the damage and replenish their energy reserves, Naomi and her team turned their attention to the data collected during the expedition. The energy readings from the ancient structure were unlike anything they had seen before, but one thing was clear: the structures were communicating. The patterns of energy emissions were not random. They were organized, structured in a way that suggested language. Naomi's team worked tirelessly to decode the signals, using every tool at their disposal. Slowly, they began to make progress. What they uncovered was a message, a warning that had been buried deep within the sun for eons. The ancient structures were not just alive, they were sentient. They had existed long before the sun had formed, part of an ancient civilization that had harnessed the power of stars to sustain itself. The message revealed that the structures had entered a state of dormancy, a self-imposed hibernation to avoid detection by a cosmic threat that had once hunted their kind. But the presence of the colonies had awakened them prematurely, triggering defensive measures to protect themselves from what they perceived as an intrusion. The most chilling part of the message was a prophecy. The ancient civilization had foreseen the return of the cosmic threat, a force that consumed stars and extinguished all life in its path. The structures had been designed to protect the sun, but they could also be used to destroy it, should the threat become too great. Naomi realized with growing horror that the colony's activities had accelerated the awakening process. The structures were now preparing for war, and the shadows were their soldiers. The flare that had struck Helios, one was just the beginning. If they didn't act soon, the entire sun could be weaponized. Chapter 6: The Cosmic Threat. With the discovery of the message, the true nature of the threat facing the colony became clear. Naomi knew that they had little time before the ancient structures fully activated and unleashed their power. The colony was on the brink of destruction, and humanity's very survival was at stake. The first step was to warn Earth. Naomi sent an urgent transmission, relaying everything they had learned about the ancient structures and the impending danger. But she knew that help would not arrive in time. The colonies were on their own. Naomi's team worked frantically to find a way to neutralize the structures. They explored every option, from disrupting the energy fields to using the quantum shield as a weapon. But the structures were too advanced, too powerful. Nothing they tried made a dent. As they struggled to find a solution, the cosmic threat mentioned in the message became more than just a distant prophecy. Astronomers on Earth detected a massive object moving through the galaxy, headed directly for the sun. It was an anomaly, a dark mass that consumed light and energy, leaving destruction in its wake. The object was still several years away, but its approach triggered a new wave of activity within the ancient structures. The shadows multiplied, growing stronger and more aggressive. Helios, one was under constant attack, and the colonists were pushed to their limits. In a desperate bid to buy time, Naomi proposed a radical plan. They would attempt to communicate with the ancient structures, to convince them that humanity was not the threat they feared. It was a long shot, but it was their only hope. Chapter 7: The Final Transmission. Using the data from the decoded message, Naomi's team crafted a response, embedding it within the energy patterns emitted by the quantum shield. The transmission was sent out into the sun, directed at the heart of the ancient structures. At first, there was no response. The shadows continued their assault, and the colony's defenses were on the verge of collapse. But then, something changed. The attacks ceased, and the shadows withdrew, retreating to the edge of the shield. Naomi held her breath as she waited for a response. Minutes passed, then hours. Finally, a new pattern emerged from the depths of the sun. It was a reply, a tentative acknowledgement of their message. The reply was complex, difficult to interpret, but Naomi's team worked tirelessly to understand it. The ancient structures seemed to recognize the colonists' plea, but they remained wary. They communicated a deep mistrust, forged over eons of conflict and survival. Naomi realized that trust would not be easily earned. They needed to prove that they were not the enemy, that they could coexist. But the threat of the cosmic entity loomed large, and time was running out. In a bold move, Naomi offered the colony's resources to help the ancient structures prepare for the coming threat. She proposed an alliance, a partnership between humanity and the ancient civilization to protect the sun and ensure the survival of both. The response was slow, but it was positive. The ancient structures began to share their knowledge, revealing secrets of the sun that had been hidden for billions of years. With their guidance, Naomi's team developed new defenses, enhancing the quantum shield and creating weapons that could target the cosmic threat. But the alliance was fragile. Any misstep could shatter the delicate balance they had achieved. And as the cosmic entity drew closer, tensions within the colony began to rise. Some colonists feared that the ancient structures could not be trusted, that they were being manipulated. Chapter 8. The Battle for the Sun. As the cosmic entity neared the sun, the alliance between the colonists and the ancient structures was put to the ultimate test. The dark mass, now clearly visible as a colossal void in the sky, began to exert its influence on the sun, causing massive solar storms and destabilizing the quantum shield. The ancient structures activated fully, revealing their true power. Massive energy fields sprang to life, surrounding the sun in a protective barrier. But even with this defense, the entity's power was overwhelming. It began to drain the sun's energy, feeding on its life force. Helios, one was thrown into chaos as the colony struggled to maintain its systems. Naomi and her team coordinated with the ancient structures, directing the colony's resources to support the defense. It was a desperate battle, fought on a scale beyond anything humanity had ever known. The cosmic entity unleashed wave after wave of dark energy, each one more powerful than the last. The ancient structures responded in kind, channeling the sun's energy into focused blasts that pushed the entity back. But the strain on the sun was immense, and the risk of a catastrophic collapse grew with each passing moment. In the final hours of the battle, Naomi made a decision that would define the colony's legacy. She ordered the quantum shield to be overloaded, channeling all of the colony's remaining energy into a single, massive attack. The plan was to combine the power of the ancient structures with the colony's technology to deliver a blow strong enough to destroy the entity. The attack was launched, a blinding surge of energy that enveloped the sun. For a moment, it seemed as though they had succeeded. The entity recoiled, its form destabilizing as it was struck by the combined force. But the victory was short-lived. The entity, though wounded, unleashed one final, desperate attack. A shockwave of dark energy erupted from its core, tearing through the sun's surface and shattering the quantum shield. Helios, one was caught in the blast. The colony's systems failed, and the structures began to collapse. Naomi watched in horror as the city she had helped build was torn apart, its inhabitants consumed by the sun's fury. In those final moments, Naomi realized that the battle was lost. The entity was too powerful, too ancient. But as the darkness closed in, a new light emerged from within the sun. The ancient structures, sensing their imminent destruction, unleashed their last resort, a self-sacrifice that would annihilate the entity and save the sun. The energy released was unimaginable, a supernova of light and heat that incinerated the cosmic entity and sealed the sun's fate. Helios, one, along with its inhabitants, was consumed in the blaze, their sacrifice ensuring that the sun would continue to burn for eons to come. Epilogue: The sun's legacy. The battle for the sun ended in both victory and loss. The cosmic entity was destroyed, and the sun was saved, but at a terrible cost. Helios, one, and its colonists were gone, their story one of bravery, sacrifice, and the limits of human ambition. Back on Earth, the loss of Helios, one sent shockwaves through humanity. The Solar Colonization Initiative was suspended, and the focus shifted to understanding the ancient structures and the cosmic threats that lurked in the universe. But the legacy of Helios, one, lived on. The knowledge gained from the alliance with the ancient structures paved the way for new discoveries, new technologies that would protect Earth and ensure humanity's survival in the cosmos. Naomi Carter's name became synonymous with courage and innovation, her story a reminder of the dangers and wonders that awaited those who dared to reach for the stars. The sun continued to burn, a beacon of life in the vastness of space, its secrets forever intertwined with the fate of humanity.